Hey Renegades, it's Sean Smith, and we're going to talk, before we mention anything about the Predators' overtime loss to the Canucks, I want to talk about something else. And I tweeted about this yesterday. It really caught my attention. I was really surprised. There was an article that came out, and I've got, if you want to go to SCS and SH and check it out, I quote tweeted it, and I took a couple of screenshots. And the article was about the top 5 waiver pickups over the course of this season in the NHL. Now, unsurprisingly, there were 2 of the 5 that were pickups by teams that picked up players that were waived by the Predators. And of course, the third best overall pickup was one that I really think flew under the radar a little bit. And that was the pickup of goalie Connor Ingram at the beginning of the season after the Predators waived him upon returning from the Global Series. Now, what's interesting was that a lot of people said, you know what, good for Connor Ingram, let him go, let him get some NHL time. He wasn't going to get it here, and they found a great backup in Lankinen. There didn't seem to be a ton of outrage at that time, but of course you have to keep in mind the context. The Predators are coming back from just absolutely dominating in Europe. They came back with a team that seemed to feature a lot of upgraded weapons. You had Nino Niederreiter was added to the crew. He scored some goals, and everybody was pretty excited about that. The Preds were 2-0 to start the season. Kiefer Sherwood had put on a big performance overseas. It was a good time to be a Predators fan. There was a lot of hope for the season. It seemed like the improvements that David Poile had made in the offseason were going to have a big impact on the ice. Now, what's interesting about this is that they waived Connor Ingram. Now, Connor Ingram was acquired in a trade for a 7th-round draft pick. I think he paid off to be a lot more than a 7th-round draft pick, and I think he's continued to pay off. But that was number three on the best waiver wire pickups of the season. And, of course, it didn't draw big outrage. I think it was circumstantial, situational. It happened at the exact right time, kind of flying under the radar without drawing a lot of attention. But the number 1 overall waiver pickup, Eeli Tolvanen, picked up by the Seattle Kraken back in December after the Predators decided to cut bait for whatever reason and let that go. That one did not go over so well. There was a lot of outrage, and it wasn't just outrage from a few fans that decided to be angry, that are always angry. It was people who typically have very calm and level-headed responses to things. People like me. It didn't make a lot of sense. People like I'd say Crazy Charlie, even as crazy as he could be, still doesn't get outraged at stuff unless it's worth being upset about. And it was upset about Eeli Tolvanen being waived. And what's interesting is that if I had quote tweeted that and put those 2 little blurbs out there showing that the number 1 and number 3 overall waiver pickups of the season were both from the Predators, there would have been, 2 weeks ago, chaos. Chaos would have reigned. People would have been calling for David Poile's job, for John Hines' job. They probably would have mentioned that Roman Josi was a bad captain or something like that. They might have called for my job. I don't know. People would have been mad. There would have been pedal taverns turned over in the streets and set ablaze. Well, for whatever reason, when I quote tweeted this yesterday, hardly drew a bat of an eyelash from anyone. Some people were like, oh, well, yep, that happened. People have, since the news of David Poile retiring and Barry Trotz's hiring, really, really, really kind of flipped a switch to where they are now not as outraged. They're not as mad about things. They're willing to move on. And I think that's what's interesting is that as much as they were angry, they've been just as willing to move on now that change is happening. And you're starting to see things happen that a lot of people have been asking to happen. They've been begging for. They've been clamoring for. Let's see the kids play, is what a lot of people have said. If you recall back to when David Poile teased the youth movement that never happened, the competitive rebuild that wasn't, and now this is I'm not sure how they're branding this, honestly. There have been so many different things, I can't remember. But it's not a rebuild. It's a reset, I guess is what they're saying. You're starting to see that play out. And I'll tell you a couple of the things that I like. I'm going to be positive and tell you some things that I like. What I liked about the Predators in their defeat by the Vancouver Canucks, First off, and it's not just last night, but the games before that, Luke Evangelista, he's getting the job done. He's making things exciting. Now, what's interesting is you've seen flashes of other players as well, putting on a good show, scoring goals, playing fast, looking good. Maybe they don't have the hair that Evangelista has. Boy's got a fine head of hair. But here's the thing. Now that you've got some of these other players out of the way, either because they've been traded like Granlund and Niederreiter or because they're injured like Forsberg and Johansson, you're getting a real long look, a real good hard look at some top-line minutes from some guys like Luke Evangelista, Cody Glass, Tommy Novak, Philip Tomasino, although he's day-to-day. But you're getting a chance to see the kids play. And I think people like what they see. I like what I see out of Luke Evangelista. I've liked what I've seen out of Tommy Novak. I like what I'm seeing out of Philip Tomasino. There's so many new names to talk about that you kind of run out of time. But the cold hard reality is that people seem to be willing to embrace this reset. And I think that if you can avoid the idea here that the team is going to tank or intentionally be bad for the rest of the season to try to gain access to a unnamed number one draft pick overall, I think that the team has a chance to start a rebuild a few steps ahead. And I think that's kind of what you want to see. You're seeing guys go out and make a name for themselves and try to maintain a roster spot because there are a lot that are open right now. And they've cleared up some cap space. They have some room to play around with next season to bring in some short-term deals to not break the bank or get locked into big contracts. And I think that's what people are wanting to see. But I like what I've seen from Luke Evangelista. The other person, and this is big news to me, Tyson Barrie. A lot of people said when they heard that he was part of the return package from Matthias Ekholm that they expected him to be flipped. When we talked to David Poile told us that he liked what Tyson Barrie was able to bring to the table with Edmonton's power play, scoring a lot of points, goals, assists, what have you, as a part of the power play unit. A lot of people said, oh yeah, but Connor McDavid's on that power play unit. Maybe it's not really Tyson Barrie. But Tyson Barrie, since I'm going to keep saying his full name. Think about that. Tyson Barrie, since he's been here, has been getting to the net. And realistically, Evangelista's second goal last night was really just a tip-in off of a great shot by Barrie. And that's, maybe it would have been stopped, but the guy's got a nose for the net, and I think that's what's important, is that you're seeing a defender that can come in and make some offensive noise. And really, outside of Roman Josi, that wasn't happening too much in Nashville. You think about a team that for a very long time has had their scoring kind of driven through the defense. It's very exciting to see another defender finally getting back in on the action. So, all that being said, there's a lot to be excited about. Sure, the Predators only came away with 1 point last night, but big deal. I'm going to be honest with you. Alex Doherty and I talked on our On the Preds podcast over at A to Z Sports about how realistically the Preds had a better chance of making the playoffs than they do at tanking and getting the number one overall draft pick. But at the same time, it's still a pretty big leap to assume they're going to make the playoffs. Doesn't mean they shouldn't try. And as long as they're out there giving their all, I think you're going to have an enjoyable time watching this team for the rest of the season, getting used to what some of these players can bring to the table and getting a preview of what it's going to be like next season when Barry Trotz, not David Poile, has a chance to add some pieces to improve his team and get things going for the next generation of Smashville. Charlie, that's about all I have. Renegades, I hope you don't realize that Brian is too big of an idiot here coming up. A little bit of a preview for you. But, Charlie, I'm going to send it back over to you.